Talk to me a little more too about add-on insurance. Do I need them? What do I need? Do I need flood insurance in Utah?
Yeah, you know, you don't need it until you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good morning and welcome to the Guiding You Forward podcast. I'm your host, Tasia Briggs, a social media specialist at Mountain America Credit Union. And today I'm sitting down with our guest, Jared Whittaker of Mountain America Insurance Services. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So let's just kind of get started. We'll just kind of run into it. Why don't you tell me what exactly is Mountain America Insurance Services?
Well, Mountain America Insurance Services is an independent agency, which means that we represent both the insurance company and the customer or the member.
Okay, so how does this work exactly? Is it the same as going to an agency like Progressive or any of those agencies?
So no, it's not the same. We represent many insurance companies, so we can find the best match for the member and their insurance needs.
So what types of insurance do Mountain America Insurance Services offer?
Yeah, we offer property and casualty, so that means like homeowners and personal auto insurance, as well as coverages that a business would need.
And talk to me a little bit about property and liability for personal, home, and cars, etc. Like, give me a little bit more detail about what that exactly means.
Insurance is all about the what if, right? Is there a claim? Is there an accident? Something that you need to protect, an asset that you as a individual or even a business owner needs to protect. Insurance is there to help protect your way of life and your assets. Worst case scenario, we're there to help cover those needs. And so the coverages that we offer, there's two basic kinds. There's property and liability. And most insurance policies that we offer are broken up into those two coverages. If you're talking about a homeowner's policy, you've got property protection for the home, and then you've also got liability insurance as well. And then same goes for auto. You've got property that protects your vehicle, and then liability. And liability always means a third-party coverage. It's going to protect somebody else for something that you are individually liable for.
Okay, so say for instance, I was hitting a golf ball in my backyard and it goes into my neighbor's yard and hits one of my neighbors. Is that something that would qualify under liability?
That would be liability.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have to be a member at Mountain America in order to receive these services?
Yeah, you don't have to be a member of Mountain America. We would encourage that, but you don't have to be.
So anyone can just come in and apply for a quote and sign up for services. That's pretty amazing. We love that. So talk to me a little bit about areas of where we cover.
Yeah, we can write pretty much in any state where a Mountain America member is. But we have good national carriers that will write in almost any state.
So let's talk a little bit more about the cost of insurance. I feel it's one of those things where many people don't necessarily want to pay for it, but it's necessary. We need it.
We do.
There's a lot of benefits of insurance that are absolutely necessary to have.
Yeah, costs of insurance premiums, as everybody knows, are going up and have been going up for the last few years. You know, COVID kind of really threw a wrench into things with supply chain, and the cost of repairing a vehicle increased. The cost of vehicles went up, and as a result, the insurance premiums went up as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So as costs have been going up, and then the cost of having to pay for those repairs has also gone up.
Yeah.
So it's also costing insurance more, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
The same happened with property values, right? The cost to repair or replace any damage to your home increased as well as that supply chain was affected, and inflationary costs for those products went up. And so auto insurance rates have kind of leveled out over the last 6 months to a year, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
The bad news is that property rates have risen, and so right now any premium increase is typically driven over the last few years, what's really driving those property costs are the number of billion-dollar events. And those are anything that causes $1 billion or more in insurance claims that are paid out. And there has been a significant increase over the last 10 years of the number of billion-dollar events in the United States.
Wow. And would those be things like weather related?
Yeah, they're weather related. Fire, hail, earthquake, flooding. We don't get a lot of that in Utah, thankfully, but there is a risk there. But you could sit in Utah and think, well, there's no real weather here. Why is this impacting my insurance rates? And it's because insurance carriers write nationwide, and they're impacted by claims or losses that are happening all over the United States.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about someone who maybe signed up online looking for a lower payment.
Shopping online, it may not be the best fit for you. And oftentimes, if you're shopping online, you're like, I just want the lowest price, the lowest premium, and satisfy the needs of a lender, or what are the minimums that I need, to comply with law. So if you do have a lower payment, and that's really the sole focus, make sure you understand what you've bought. Typically, you might have a lower deductible than you were thinking, and it may be too high for what you could afford in the event of a claim. Maybe there's an excluded driver, and sometimes maybe there's a vehicle that hasn't been captured. And so you always want to double check. And oftentimes, if you're saving money, it can come at the cost of reducing limits that may not respond or cover you in the event of a claim or a loss. It may not be the protection that you really need or that you really think that you're getting.
Right. So in that case, it would be best to speak with an agent.
Absolutely.
Understand your coverage, understand what you're signing up for.
Absolutely. For example, when you're buying an auto policy, are you aware of what the liability limits are and what they will cover and what they're intended to cover? Auto liability has split limits. There's a personal injury to an individual, then there's a personal injury per accident limit, and then a property damage per accident limit. And so there's 3 different numbers there, and if you don't know what they mean or what they're intended to cover, you won't know if it's actually enough. And Utah just raised their state minimum required limits January 1st of this year. They raised them to $30,000 in personal injury to one person, $65,000 per accident for bodily injury, and then $25,000 in property damage to someone else's vehicle or property. And so if you think about worst case scenarios, those limits are probably insufficient to cover a claim, an accident, damage to a person. And if there are multiple people or multiple cars involved, it really will not protect you. And you're liable for whatever those damages are, and they can go after your personal assets in order to reimburse or pay for those that you may have damaged. And insurance is there to step in and provide protection of your assets.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you guys recommend then coming in for higher liability coverage at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. And we recommend limits of at least 100, 300, 100. And talk to an agent. We can talk you through why that would be a wise decision in most instances. And we're sensitive to the fact that costs are going up and your insurance premiums are going up. And so we can help you find ways to save money, but at least you're aware of what it is that you're purchasing and how it would pay out a claim in the future. We can look at all discounts that are available and maybe help you understand what there might be surcharges for. Insurance is rated. You start at a kind of a baseline of what the risk involved is of a future claim for an individual. Of course, you're going to pay more for your comprehensive and collision coverage for a new vehicle because it's going to cost more to replace it. And anybody who has a new driver in their house. A teenage driver is great. Youthful driver will incur an increased premium just because the frequency of the number of times they're getting in accidents, and that costs more. It's just a riskier proposition.
Probability's a little higher for those new drivers.
It is.
Yeah.
Of course, bundling is always a good way to discount. That means having your property, your homeowner's policy with your auto policy, combining those. And if you don't own a home, then combining a renter's policy. And it can save you money. There's a multi-policy discount that carriers will apply if you have more than one policy with them. And it's actually to your benefit in the event of a claim as well. Not only do you save money, but let's say there's a claim in your vehicle that happens on your property. And oftentimes insurance companies will try to, they may try and figure out who's actually responsible to pay the claim. And so if it's with the same insurance company in the event of a claim, then it's a much smoother process. So you save money and get a better claims process as well.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons to bundle. Other discounts that are popular, especially if you have a youthful driver, good student discount. There's good driver discounts, not just for youthful drivers, but for those of us who are a little bit older. And so our driving behavior can affect our insurance premium. And in fact, one of the discounts a lot of insurance companies are offering now is telematics. It used to be something you could plug into your car and it would track your driving behavior. But now it's as simple as an app. And then it tracks your behavior, how fast you drive, the number of stops and starts that you have, accelerated stops and starts.
Wow.
It can track where you're driving and time of day. If it's heavy commute times and there's an intersection where there are, more likelihood of a claim, insurance companies will be able to rate based on that. Right now, it's a lot of information gathering, and so there are discounts if you download the app and use it. And for every insurance company, it's different. It can range from 3 to 7% discount just for using a telematics app. One of the things about it is if you have the app and you're not driving, you want to make sure to let it know, because if you're riding with somebody, it could be
tracking their behavior, yours.
And not yours. And so you want to make sure it will ask you, are you driving or not?
So tell me a little bit more about your team.
We have a great group of licensed agents. We have 13 agents whose sole focus is those that are already Mountain America Insurance customers, and they stand ready and willing. They are bilingual. We have Spanish speaking and English speaking. And they actually are working remote from their homes, and just we are available from 8 a.m. Mountain until 5 p.m. Mountain Time, available for members' needs. And then if you're interested in becoming a MACE customer, or at least talking with an agent, we have 10 licensed agents that stand ready and eager to assist a member with their insurance needs.
That's incredible. Yeah. So a wide range of people ready to help. I love that. We love to hear that. What potentially are some other things that can affect your premium? Types of claims that you're making? Big claims, small claims, obviously bigger claims. A
lot of times insurance companies will take a look at how often are you filing smaller claims. It's not just the severity of the claim that's filed, because they expect that there will be one every now and then. What they found is that the more often that you're filing these smaller claims, the increased likelihood that you're going to file a larger claim. It could be an auto policy. If there's frequent glass claims, you're replacing your windshield, every 6 months. And sometimes it's just the nature of you're driving on a road where there may be construction and rocks fall off of trucks. And, if you think about roadside assistance as well. Frequent users, if your car is breaking down and you're using that roadside assistance a lot, that's on your insurance policy, that will lead them to believe that the likelihood of you filing a larger claim in the future is high. So tell me a little bit more about an umbrella insurance policy. What exactly is that? Yeah, so an umbrella policy is a liability policy. So that means it's going to pay others for damage incurred or for damage that has been done to them, or if there's a claim. So an umbrella policy will sit down on top of and cover. That's why it's called an umbrella policy, because it covers multiple policies where liability is involved, and that could be your homeowners or renters policy, and as well as your auto liability. And so if we were talking about the limits, what those are into the split limits on an auto policy, what they cover, and if you feel like maybe 100, 300, 100 is insufficient, then for example, I have a teenage driver, and worst case scenario is they get in an accident and there's a claim that even exceeds those limits. What happens? And so to further protect your assets, an umbrella policy provides an additional layer of coverage above and beyond what that underlying policy has. And an umbrella policy, depending on where you buy it, will have a minimum. They'll say, okay, we won't cover state minimums, but you need to have at least 100, 300, 100. For every carrier, it's a little bit different, and so your agent can advise you on that. But it provides that extra layer of protection that maybe your homeowner's policy won't cover. Pet ownership has increased recently, and in the event of a dog bite, those claims can get pretty expensive pretty quickly. If you have a pet or a youthful driver, not to equate the two, but it's a good idea to at least consider an umbrella policy and understand what the risks are and what the coverage would be and what the cost is. Is the risk of not having an umbrella policy, which is greater, that risk or the cost of that policy?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was having a conversation with someone about this recently too, and talking about how umbrella is also maybe potentially a good addition also for like cases of fraud. Absolutely. As well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. There has been increased fraud activity in the state of Utah regarding insurance. I was in a class where there was an investigator from the state of Utah Department of Insurance, and he was sharing instances of fraud that they've been investigating. And if you think about it, if you're driving your vehicle, somebody could stop short in front of you intentionally, try to get you to run into them, or even to ding them, just barely graze, and then claim that there is significant bodily injury as a result, even if there's no property damage to the vehicle. And oftentimes they work in pairs, where there could be a witness that would be following you and somebody in front of you that would create that accident. So all the more reason, one, to not drive distractedly, but to be aware of your surroundings and make sure that you have proper coverage, because they'll be quick to pull in, to take it to an attorney and file a claim, because what they think is that there's these deep pockets of insurance coverage out there, and if you have state minimums, or even if you don't have an umbrella, it's really going to be insufficient to protect you and your assets in those instances.
Yeah. And I mean,
it's frustrating, because what that does is it drives up insurance rates for everybody else.
Yeah. With
the increased claims activity that are happening. It's something that you saw isolated in different parts of the country, but it's now in Utah, and they have full-time, they have a full fraud team within the state that do those investigations.
So talk to me a little more too about add-on insurance. Do I need them? What do I need? Do I need flood insurance in Utah?
Yeah, you don't need it until you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's so easy to think that you don't. But oftentimes, in Utah, we don't have a ton of rain, so it's not like there's this persistent, consistent risk of flooding. But when you do have a big weather event and a lot of rain, then that flooding will occur, and that is not covered under your homeowner's policy. It's specifically excluded. because it doesn't contemplate, the premium they're charging doesn't contemplate that risk.
Right, because it's so low.
It's so low. And so if you live, you can talk to your agent, find out if you live in a floodplain. They actually, the insurance companies do the risk of flood. They kind of do a floodplain mapping, so they can see who's at risk, and premiums are charged accordingly. But it's always worth exploring and understanding what that cost is. Get a quote on flood insurance. And other natural disasters. Earthquake is not covered in your homeowner's policy. So it depends on what keeps you up at night and what you want to have in place to help protect you. Other add-on coverages you need to kind of explore. Make sure that you have a scheduled property policy, that you have, if you have high value items, that they are scheduled. It could be a ring, it could be antiques, it could be art, anything like that. You want to make sure that it's adequately scheduled. And the benefit of a scheduled policy, or having an item scheduled on your policy, is you agree to a limit at which it will be covered and you will be reimbursed.
Oh, great.
In the event of a loss.
So that big expensive wedding ring, if anything ever happens to that.
make sure that you have it covered adequately in case of loss or theft.
Right.
You want to make sure you can replace it. Another add-on coverage that we really recommend that you explore is for your toys, your RVs, boats, ATVs, anything like that. You really want to understand what your homeowner's policy covers and what it doesn't cover. So insurance companies offer specific policies for those. We call it a toy policy because they're fun, recreational vehicles.
There's plenty of those in Utah.
They're all over the place. And believe it or not, you may be covered for liability if the ATV is used on your own property, but once you go off property, which they all do, the coverage won't follow.
Wow.
And so you could be, driving that ATV around with no liability coverage. And so it's important that you explore what your homeowner's policy is covering you for and what it is not.
Does an umbrella cover my liability while recreating?
Yeah, great question. As long as you have a policy that provides coverage for that ATV, and the limits are sufficient, the umbrella will help cover your liability. We want to make sure, though, that the ATV is listed, that it's a specific policy that will provide coverage in the event you're off premises. Is really the biggest risk, and then it's also listed on the umbrella policy. So that's a common gap in insurance coverage, is you may have the first layer of coverage, but it may not be specifically listed on your umbrella policy. That's why it's great to do that annual review with your agent.
Yeah.
If you add an ATV in the middle of the year, if you take it off, you want to make sure that you're adequately covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Does this apply to, I'm guessing, to boats as well?
Absolutely. You should have a separate boat policy, understand what it covers you for and what it doesn't. Liability is the bigger issue. I mean, you're going to be required, if you have a loan, and on that boat, you're going to be required to provide property coverage so that your lender is made whole. But you really want to explore those liability limits so that you are protected as well.
Yeah, especially where you're going to be having probably multiple people on your boat on a different property.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look at the exclusions.
Right.
Because sometimes alcohol, an incident or claim, for alcohol could be excluded.
So what other tips should I really know about insurance?
A question that we get frequently is, I'm renting a car, they're offering insurance, should I buy that coverage? I would say at least the physical damage, the comp and collision, because it's walk-away coverage, meaning you return the keys and you walk away. And if not, if you haven't purchased it and there is any sort of damage, you have to pay your deductible to the rental car company. And then, you're liable for other things. That rental car, if it's damaged, it's no longer in operation, and the rental car company cannot make money off of it.
Yeah.
And so they can file a claim not just for damage to their vehicle, but also for loss of use. So for loss of sales, and that can add up pretty quickly if it's out for weeks on end. So that's an important coverage that, that you have. So at least for physical damage, liability, it's not a bad idea. It's up to you. But while your auto policy will extend coverage for a rental car, typically you just want to make sure it's not excluded. But most policies are going to cover that, but it won't be to a level that maybe you're comfortable at. So I always try to get the physical damage. One example, I was in Florida earlier this year with my daughter, and we got there and the rental car company says, hey, you can pick your vehicle, right? Which vehicle do you want? And they started going through options, and then they said, what about a Mustang? And I was like, oh, let's talk more about that. And they said, it's a convertible. And I said, absolutely. Florida,
Florida,
having a
convertible Mustang?
It's
Get
perfect.
that sunshine.
And so I was so excited about that I just did mine, just waived the comp and collision. Well, so it was at night, it was dark. You kind of walk around and make sure that there's no damage. And then we got out, we got to the hotel, and I went out in the morning in the parking lot, and I registered that it was missing a cap on the side view mirror. It just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh man, did I get the coverage? And I didn't. And so, I had increased anxiety during that vacation about, making sure that got taken care of. But we got it taken care of with the insurance company and with the rental car company. But I thought the whole time, why did I not get that coverage? So insurance is like that.
Yeah. If
you don't buy it, you will regret it later.
Is there anything else I need to know in terms of the claims process?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things I think that is commonly misunderstood is how does an insurance company pay a claim if there's damage? So in the event that there's a property damage to your personal property, they will not just write you out a check for the limit that's there. You will have to go out and buy the replacement items and then turn in the receipts to the insurance company, and they'll reimburse you as you spend it. So it's not a blank check that you get and deposit it. You have to incur the cost and get reimbursed.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I live in a home that is very tall.
Okay.
And I have always thought, what am I going to do if I have to get my roof done or replaced?
Right.
So what are some things that I really need to know about roof coverage?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really kind of a hot topic right now in insurance because one of the things you need to understand is that it is not a maintenance policy, meaning it's not there. Your insurance policy is not intended to cover regular, wear and tear on that roof. After 10, 15 years, it's really there to respond in the event of, it could be a fire, it could be hail damage. Those are really the two, big times that a roof gets damaged. Your insurance policy will respond in those instances, but it's not intended to be a maintenance policy. And so what happens is there have, over the last few years, there have been a lot of roofs that where there's just slight damage. And the way the policy used to be written was that they would replace the whole roof if there was just damage to one portion of it. That's no longer the case because you can imagine the cost with replacing a whole roof if there's just one part of it that's damaged. And so it's a good idea to take a look at your policy, understand what it does cover, and whole roof replacement is an unusual thing unless the whole roof is damaged now. And insurance companies are even becoming more and more concerned or sensitive to the fact that the older your roof gets, the increased likelihood that it's going to be damaged. And so there will be an age restriction. It used to be 15 to 20-year-old roof for you to qualify for a preferred insurance product. That is now reducing to around 7 to 10 years in age of the roof. So it's really good to educate yourself, talk to your agent, and take a look at what coverage is currently there. It's a really good idea that your roof is going to get old and it's going to need to be fixed. Start a rainy day fund and make sure you contemplate saving in advance for for your roof, depending on how old it is.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And especially as those costs just keep going up. So it's always a good time to start.
Yes.
Never too late to start.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we also live in Utah too. Renting is a huge thing. I mean, it's always so huge everywhere, but what are some things that maybe we need to really know about renter's insurance? Yeah,
renter's insurance. The first thing you should know is that if you currently don't have one, the cost of a renter's policy can usually be offset by a savings on your auto policy.
Oh.
So a lot of times you can get it for no increased cost out of pocket. So a renter's policy has two components. It's got property and it's got liability. Mm-hmm. And your property is going to cover your personal property. And what that covers is, if you imagine just taking your house, and this applies to homeowners too, but for personal property, if you took your house, turn it upside down and shake it, anything that falls out is personal property, would be covered under that limit. And oftentimes we don't know, especially if you're renting, what that coverage limit should be. But oftentimes it's more expensive, or it should be higher than you might think. So take a quick inventory of what your belongings are, what it would cost to replace them. You can do a video inventory. That's always a good idea for personal property. Renters or homeowners is to every so often just take a quick video inventory of what your belongings are. Kind of walk around your house and all the different rooms in your garage, and take a look at what you do own. And then if you run the numbers, I think most people are surprised. So we recommend a personal property limit of at least $25,000 for a renter. Increased, if you have more rooms to the property that you're renting. That personal property coverage will extend beyond the premises as well in most cases. So for example, a lot of renters have a storage unit. Your personal property would be covered even if it's at a storage unit or off premises, including in your vehicle. So any of your belongings that are in your vehicle, if it's damaged, is not covered by your auto policy. That would need to fall under your homeowner's personal property or under your renter's personal property. Your landlord is often going to encourage you to buy their policy. Make it easy, make it quick, but they're really just protecting themselves. They're not protecting you. And their liability policy typically only responds for their liability, not your own. Yeah.
So it's important to protect yourself.
It's always important to protect yourself. Yeah. And if in your renter's policy, all you need to do is name them as additional insured, which is really easy to do. And then it meets the needs for your landlord as well.
That's good to know. I have plenty of friends who are renters, so I'll be for sure passing that on to them.
You'd be like, hey,
here's
some advice.
Listen to this episode, you guys. So if I'm a business owner, what are some special types of coverage that you would recommend? Yeah,
one coverage that's top of mind and is really important to explore with your agent right now is a cyber policy. As we talk to business owners, oftentimes it's their number one concern. Am I protected or not? And for a cyber incident. You hear about hacking, and a lot of small businesses think that they're really not a target. But the thing of it is if you have a website, if you are storing customer data, information, emails, like do you use email, and do you have their contact information saved somewhere? Oftentimes, hackers will try and go after a small company, get access to their customer list, and by that way gets a larger, maybe a bigger targets that might be a little more, identifiable,
right.
or at greater risk that they feel like they can hold hostage for an increased payment amount.
Right. Okay.
So it's always good if you have any type of online presence, or you're using email or text functionality to get a quote. It's a lot cheaper than I think most people think. You really need to talk to an agent and take a look at the policy. Each carrier is really different. It's not where there's standardized forms right now.
Okay.
And so you really want to take a look at it individually.
So we've talked a lot today about some really great information, all about insurance, all about coverage. But after all of that, if there's one thing that any of our listeners could take away today, what would that be?
Yeah, it's talk to an agent. We have agents standing by who are really sympathetic to what your needs are. They're going to do a needs assessment. They'll talk with you. They'll see, what would you like to protect against what your budget is, and help you understand what it is that you're buying. Then they will help you maybe take a more intentional approach to your insurance purchase.
Fantastic. Love it. Can't wait. Hopefully everyone comes and meets with your team now.
That'd be great. We'd love to hear
That's
from you.
what we want.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, thank you so much for joining us today and imparting all of your knowledge on us. It's been fantastic to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Guiding You Forward podcast.